Hey everyone, this is Alvaro Cortez Jr., aka Lance Danger. This is yet another week of Hell Beneath You. I'm just pretty much working on the first draft of the first chapter. Last week I was able to work on the first chapter and that prologue, but I decided to kind of divide the two things since it was tonally different, one thing from the other. So I went ahead and did the first draft of the prologue, and now I'm just kind of fleshing out the draft for the first chapter of Hell Beneath You. So I'm going to take my time with that. My shoulders are slowly starting to feel a lot better, and yeah, just mostly working a lot on Hell Beneath You on that draft. I'm also working on a lot of the other properties that I have because I don't want that to lag behind too much either. I'm really getting into Funnybone. I kind of want to make a push for November to be kind of like Funnybone month, kind of like how I do Warlord month in August and whatnot. You know, just like something fun to do and just something cool to put out there for the readers and whatnot. So hopefully that'll be cool and fun for everyone. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and keep working on that stuff. So these vignettes, I guess, will be a lot more balanced in the sense of talking about other stuff as well as not just Till Beneath You, because I do have to do a lot of other stuff as well, and I am like trying to do that draft as best as possible. All right, I updated on my Patreon the fourth part of Funnybone Rage of the Lucky 14. So to all the Patreon backers that are there, you can definitely check out part 4 of Funnybone Rage of the Lucky 13. The PDF is already uploaded. Of course, I uploaded the cover as well, so you can check that out. This has been pretty fun doing Rage of the Lucky 13. It's pretty much, if I haven't spoken about it before, it's essentially my love letter to those old 70s and 80s kung fu movies and like 80s action movies. So this is very much in the vein of Sonny Chiba, Charles Bronson, all that kind of good stuff that I grew up with. Actually, one of my father's favorite actors was actually Charles Bronson. He practically idolized Charles Bronson to an extent, as well as Bruce Lee also. Because of my love of Bruce Lee movies that I developed because of my father, I eventually got into other martial arts movies as well. So, of course, eventually I came onto the Street Fighter, not to be confused with the video game, of course. You know, it was a hyper-violent, very gory movie. It was actually rated X when it played in the theaters in the US in the 70s. So, yeah, it was very fun. And that franchise kind of helped kickstart the whole idea of doing Funnybone's own side story as well. So it's a lot more action-packed than what I usually write. There is some moments to flesh out the characters and to kind of give the story time to breathe a little bit, but it's mostly action, action, action from beginning until the end of the story. It is going to be 6 parts. I am uploading them every month for the moment. So in December, part 5 will be coming up, and hopefully in January, part 6 will be coming up. And by then, hopefully I'll be able to also just think about if I'm going to do Funnybone as a Kindle Vella kind of thing as well. So if you're not on my Patreon, as I've mentioned before, patreon.com/Lance Danger, for as little as $1 a month, you can read all 4 parts of Funnybone. By the time these videos come out, probably all 6 parts are going to be available already. There's also PDFs of the comics that I've been able to put on print as well, ranging from Warlord to Nevermind to Stupid the Cat. So there is a lot of content for $1 there. You also get an advance listen to the podcast as well. I posted like about 3 weeks before I actually put it on Podomatic and other podcast hosting sites as well. So you can definitely give that a look if you wish. And there's also a ton of free content. About 90% of the content that I have on my Patreon is free. So hopefully you'll get value either way, whether you're paying a patron or if you just want to keep up to speed and check out some behind the scenes stuff. You can get the free stuff, and there's also the paid stuff as well. I decided to do another upload for Patreon as well. This is one of the freebies that I do, which is the Nevermind comparisons between the original strip and the newer strip as well. Pretty much the remastering of the strip. As you can see, this is one of the more noticeable ones of how it looked like compared to how it is later on. This one was a weird one. It was bizarre. And of course, this really did happen. It was a coworker that she always found a way to make everything sound dirty. I don't know how she was able to do it. She was quite a bit older than me. At the time, I was probably in my mid-20s when I was working at that workplace, and she was well into her 50s, I believe. And she would always do, of course, a lot of jokes that were double entendre, a lot of dirty jokes and whatnot. A lot of people did in that workplace, and it never really bothered me or anything like that. But this one specific was just bizarre, because I was just having hiccups, and I go over to the water cooler just to have a couple of drinks of water to just get over the hiccups. And because it's really annoying, and especially when you're trying to do work that you have to have your focus and have quite a bit of dexterity as well, it just gets my mind muddled and I can't really concentrate. So I went for a drink of water to help with the hiccups, and the closest one was actually next to her station. She never changed her workstation. She was always in that same spot. And it was kind of a blind spot where supervisors can't really at first glance see the employees there, and the cameras really can't either in that specific spot. So sometimes she would take naps in between shifts, and especially if she worked overtime or something, she would just take random naps there because nobody could see her anyway. So this one time when I had that hiccups and I was going to drink some water, she sees me, and of course she asks how I'm doing, if I'm okay, because she kind of saw me kind of shiver a bit, but it was just me trying to contain the hiccups. So of course I tell her that I had hiccups, and she's just like, "Oh, I know what kind of hiccups you have," with that kind of voice. And she's laughing at her own joke, of course, and then she just fell asleep. She just started sleeping out of nowhere, and it was the first time I've seen her do this. At one point, I thought maybe she had narcolepsy, but if she did, or if it was serious, I guess, it would have been a worse case. I don't know. It was just weird, man. Again, she just goes to sleep. I'm looking at her are you serious? And I'm just staring at her, and I kind of slowly start walking away because, at first I was worried that she fainted or something, but no, she just started snoring. I was like, okay, I'm just going to back off right now. And then as I'm backing off, yeah, she starts to kind of like wake up, and she wakes up and she just keeps working like normal. I'm like, okay, that just happened, and just carried on with my day as best as possible. Work, man. I miss that place sometimes, to be honest. A lot of crazy stuff happened there, but you know, you move on sometimes, and if it's not like the right place for you, then it's not the right place for you to keep growing professionally. Then it's time to, yes, move on to bigger and better things, I guess. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I decided to kind of make November Funnybone month. So I just uploaded the first cover of Funnybone Rage of the Lucky 13 onto the Serene Chaos Facebook page, where I post my artwork. If you're curious about it, just go to facebook.com/Serene Chaos Art. And there you can follow all my usual updates there of what I'm up to and whatnot. And I just kind of posted the cover with an excerpt of chapter 1. I just posted the entire first act into it. It's gotten a pretty good reception so far. People have really liked it from what they've commented to me off the site. So that's encouraging. And hopefully it'll keep spreading the word around for this story. As I've told you before, I'm kind of on the fence of doing Kindle Vella, so I may do that eventually. But yeah, it's been a very funny bone day. I started it off by uploading the 4th part onto Patreon of Rage of the Lucky 13, and now I uploaded the cover with an excerpt to Facebook, because I also realized that I haven't really put much artwork of Funnybone on my art page, which is odd because I like to put behind the scenes artwork or promotional artwork, or just upload the covers to that Facebook just to have some fun, and also to show it off to whoever might be interested in reading or interested in acquiring the products that I put up there. So yeah, I started putting up, I'm going to be putting up the covers for a Rage of the Lucky 13 onto its own specific Funnybones folder, cover folder. I also did a Funnybone B-side folders. Excuse me. The B-side folders are essentially folders where I put promotional artwork that are either works in progress or that I started doing but didn't finish it because I wasn't quite feeling it, or just sketches that I do that eventually become more finished illustrations later on. So kind of like an artist releasing a B-side of their album or singles, where it's tracks that didn't make the cut to their album, or alternate versions of songs that people know that came before the version that was on the album, or something like that. Something similar, but with artwork instead. All right, it's been a pretty eventful Monday. Aside from working from a little bit on the first draft for chapter 1 of Hell Beneath You, have you seen by now, I uploaded some Funnybone content on Patreon and on Facebook as well. Not to mention Nevermind as well, the Nevermind the Comeback, where I talk about, or write about rather, about the differences between the original strip and the remake. And on YouTube, I uploaded the first episode of the 2nd season of my podcast, the Serene Chaos Podcast. You can look me up as Lance Danger on YouTube, and you can subscribe and like and share the videos if you wish. As I mentioned before, it's been getting a pretty good reception. People have been really liking the podcast. I'm really grateful for that. It shot into the top 10 most played and downloaded podcasts in the visual arts category on Podomatic, which is so freaking cool. I really want to express my gratitude to everyone that's listened or downloaded the podcast, and I hope each episode keeps getting better and that you find any kind of value in that podcast that I'm starting to pick up again. Yes, got done with my first session of physical therapy for this week. And I've been pushed physically like I haven't been in years now. Today was really brutal, and I know I say that almost every update when it comes to the physical therapy sessions, but today he really keeps pushing further than he had before, and I know he does it because he believes that I can do it, and I know I can do it, but man, is it a pain to actually do it. I'm going to lick my wounds and continue working on stuff today if I don't pass out as soon as I get home. And icky 70 degrees today. The weather's gone up quite a bit, and they're already starting to construct the Christmas stalls that they do here at Union Square. Christmas is in the air, I guess. Thanksgiving notwithstanding. I uploaded the second cover to Funnybone Rage of the Lucky 13, along with an excerpt of Act 11 of Funnybone, which is actually an interesting kind of back and forth between Vincent and Samuel. For those of you who don't know, Vincent is the real name of the character Clown. Clown is essentially the sidekick of Funnybone, and pretty much his student, his protege, really. And Samuel is Funnybone's real name. And for those of you wondering the backstory of Funnybone, Funnybone is a spin-off from Fred Peterson, The Mighty Warlord, my main webcomic, and probably the comic property that I'm most relatively known for. Funnybone is a character that I came up with that's actually based on a Harlequin doll that my sister used to have. My mom had bought that doll for her when we went to the Ringley Brothers and Bailey Barnum Circus, whatever it was called. I believe it was something like that. But anyway, like, she had bought me like this cool circus flashlight and some kind of other thing. I think maybe a plush doll or something. I really don't remember. I remember the flashlight more than anything else, which was so cool to me. And my sister, my mom got her a Harlequin doll, which was, all dressed in black and white, kind of like the original Funnybone design that I had, except that it didn't have the long hair, of course. It just had like that cap, Harlequin cap, I guess, that looked kind of like a dunce hat. I guess it's like those long pointy hats. So that's the hat that doll had. And it was in my family for years until it eventually broke. But before that happened, when we moved to Puerto Rico, of course, my sister took that doll with us as well. And later on, eventually, one of my cousins had her first and only kid, and she's a teacher, and her husband is a police officer, so they really needed somebody to take care of that baby. So they asked my mom if she could babysit for them, at least Monday through Friday while my cousin was at school working as a teacher. And my mom acceded. She wanted to help her out and, family. So, yeah, she helped take care of her for like the first year or two that she was a baby until eventually she was able to go to like pre kinder or whatever. And sometimes my mom would take care of her when they would need to do something. And sometimes she would be a little hyperactive. Like she was a well behaved kid. But sometimes, kids will be kids, and sometimes they'll be grumpy for one reason or another. If you see a jump cut, I accidentally knocked over the phone as I was recording this. But to finish this story real quickly, whenever my cousin's kid would get a little uppity, my mom would take that Harlequin doll and she would put it in the crib just to like entertain her so that the baby would play with it to see if it would calm her down. But instead of calming her down, she was actually afraid of it. So, like, my mom would put the Harlequin doll in a little corner of the crib, sitting down facing her, just so the baby could approach it. But the baby would just, like, sit down and, again, I don't know if it was fear or curiosity or respect, I don't know. The baby would just sit down from across the crib and just stare at the doll. Just look at it, and like after a few minutes, like my mom would see that and she'll like take the doll away, and the baby would like behave afterwards after that. So the very few times that she would kind of act up and nothing would work, that's what my mom would do. She would put the doll in her crib and she would automatically just sit down and watch the doll. And I thought to myself, that would make a pretty interesting character. So I pretty much took a Harlequin and added Rurouni Kenshin like hair to it. And that's how Funnybone came about. It was essentially a Harlequin doll mixed up with Rurouni Kenshin, really. Kenshin Himura, really, if you want to call him by that name, the Hitukiri Batosai. So that's the story of how Funnybone came along. And the story of Clown is he is actually a character created by a friend of mine that actually created a lot of characters that appear in Warlord. He also was very big into comics and creating his own characters. But once he kind of got out of it, he kind of just told me like, hey, here, I have this catalog of characters. I'm not going to use them and I don't want them to go to waste. So any characters that you think you can use for your stories, you can go ahead and just use them. They're all yours. And Clown happened to be one of those characters. And they were, even though they have different backgrounds, Funnybone and Clown, they were kind of similar enough for me to go like, it would be interesting to have a protege character for Funnybone. And that's kind of how the idea to develop this version of Clown came about. So it's very much like with Fatfish, which is another character that came from my friend, where I would basically take the name and the concept of the character and then just rework it into something that would work into this world that I'm creating and mesh it together and kind of redesign the characters to fit the story as well. So all of these characters don't really look like they originally did either. The same with Dark Warlock, another villain in Fred Pearson, the Mighty Warlord. So yeah, that's the story of Funnybone and Clown.
Happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service.
Today smells like America. I know. This has been a very funny bone heavy episode. Just to update, I am working on the first draft of issue 1 of Hell Beneath You, or chapter 1, if you want to call it that. I have hit a bit of a snag with the pacing, to be honest. I'm kind of like working back and forth and not making it too slow, where it drags on a little too much. That's something that I've been trying to avoid with this comic. It's something that happens in other comics of mine as well. It happens with Warlord, especially in the beginning, where things would kind of drag on a little bit. So I want to like kick up the pace a little more, like not make things happen too fast, but not have it be so much of a slow burn either. Like, I don't want to give the comic that sensation that it's being written just for the trade, if you know what I mean. Decompressed storytelling, as they call it, where you're essentially writing knowing that's going to be collected anyway, so you kind of slow it out a little bit and then do the big payoff. I want the pace to be relatively even throughout, so I've been trying to do that, and I guess struggling a little bit, but again, that comes with experience and actually doing this stuff in this way. And hopefully I'll be able to get that flow better. But going back to Funnybone, I updated updated the Beast, the cover album. I suddenly can't talk. I updated the B-sides album on my Facebook page of Funnybone. So, well, not the B-side, but the covers. Anyway, for Rage of the Lucky 13, with an excerpt from the 3rd chapter, Act 14, which is the main characters getting prepared to face the Lucky 13 themselves. So this was a very fun chapter to write and to edit. The person on the cover is called Runaway Mara. Mara is a character that she ran away from home. She befriends Funnybone. He saves her at some point when thugs were about to rob her, to mug her, and she kind of like hung around him, and now she gets dragged into this whole thing that's happening with the Lucky 13 and whatnot. And I'm not going to talk too much about her because I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but she is an important character for as minor as it seems. From what I'm telling you guys. So again, hopefully to everyone that's been reading on Patreon, hope you've been enjoying it. I sound like a broken record by this point and super indecisive. I'm usually more decisive with these kind of things, but I am like really, really mulling over the whole Kindle Vella thing, because it's not such an easy decision to make, because there are also, of course, their own sets of rules and regulations. Like, for example, you can't just simply adapt something that you've already written and sold and put it up on Kindle Vella, because they'll just take that down. It has to be a story that's either being published originally exclusively through Kindle Vella, or if it was published slowly, like I'm publishing Funnybone before, and it was behind a paywall like Patreon or something, there's a great area where that actually is accepted. So that's why I'm thinking this over, because if I do Kindle Vella, I'll probably edit the scripts a little bit more and polish it maybe a little bit more and put it up there as well. as well as the continuing story, because I have in mind like a trilogy for this Funnybone side story to tell. So I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but yeah, I do have like a trilogy planned in my head of where to take this character. And of course, the main storyline that happens in Fred Peterson, the Mighty Warlord as well. Today I took a little bit of a break from doing Hell Beneath You. Um, I opened the file and again I tried to just kind of go with the flow of the writing and whatnot, and it really wasn't working. So at least for today, I'm going to give it a small break, and I actually decided to work on the 5th and 6th cover of Rage of the Lucky 13 for Funnybone. And I guess I have Funnybone fever myself or something. Or I just really want to see this finished. I think it's a mix of both, of being excited on working on these characters and also just excited that I'm about to finish this story as well. Even though I've written the whole thing years ago, I am adapting it from a comic book strip into more of a novella book or prose book, because I don't know if I've mentioned it before, to be honest, and if I haven't, it'll be a good recap. I had written Funnybone Rage of the Lucky 13 since 2010, and I really wanted to put it out in 2011 as a webcomic. But unfortunately, it was during that time that I had that car accident that really set a lot of things back. In my personal and professional life. So that kept being on hold a number of years. And as I recovered, I wanted to continue with Warlord, but aside from continuing with Warlord, I also wanted to finish other projects that I had been doing already, like Nevermind and Stupid the Cat and Wepamani Wepito and Delta Task Force and The Cannon Girl and also the Mysterious Exorcist one shot. So I was kind of overwhelmed by the workload in that sense. So I went ahead and started finishing off those things. And then that also led into doing freelance writing for further stories for Project New Wave with Manuel Carmona, and writing short stories for Jose Cruz, Silver Island Studios. So Funnybone kept being pushed back, and I decided, what the heck, I'm just going to adapt the script since it's written already and kind of do my best to make it into a novella instead, where I upload each chapter at a time, and that's what I've been doing so far on Patreon. I originally started off doing it on Amazon Kindle, but then it just kind of felt more fun to do it on Patreon instead. I got to put chapters 1 and 2 on Kindle, and I've been putting the other chapters on Patreon instead. Which is why I think it would be a good idea to put it on Kindle Vella. But anyway, I digress. Here is the cover reveal, I guess. I'm going to do a live stream in a little bit. I usually live stream like very late at night at the witching hour or whatever. Like usually after I finish recording these videos and doing artwork and writing, I'll just start doing a live stream to talk about stuff and sometimes show off these images if I've started drawing something. I've been a lot more comfortable illustrating again and taking it a little bit at a time. So hopefully, since there's not that much details on these illustrations. That's why I went ahead and did it anyway, to kind of continue in that same stylization that I've had since the first cover of the Patreon version of Funnybone Rage of the Lucky 13. So there you have it, the final two covers. You will have already seen them from the live stream or eventually when these videos start going up. Alright, so I just finished live streaming. I went on for like about an hour, give or take, so if my voice sounds a little hoarse, that's why. Actually, I had to divide the stream into two parts because I did not notice that the first part of the stream actually didn't air on Facebook and on YouTube. It was on private. It had been a little bit since I've been live streaming, so sometimes the setting will change as the site updates or whatever. So sometimes I forget to just go into the settings to see that nothing has changed, and I just start live streaming. And luckily I realized that what was happening, and I went back and fixed that. And so the second part, you know, I did the cover reveal and whatnot. For those curious, as you can see, I use Restream. It's a very efficient website, in my opinion, at least, to do these kind of streams. I'm able to stream on YouTube and Facebook at the same time, and I'm able to have multiple guests as well if I want to invite someone, or if someone pops up on during the live and wants to come in, I can certainly do that as well. And I can share videos, share images, you know, what I have on my computer screen, which is pretty cool. It's a bit of a learning curve because I've never used this kind of software before. But it's been a lot of fun doing these live streams on my YouTube channel. Right here, I just have it paused because sometimes if I'm not too tired, I go back on the live stream just to skip to certain parts just to make sure that the audio is well and whatnot, just to make sure that everything's streamed properly. So I am considering probably going back and adding tags and thumbnails to these videos. Once I have a little bit more time and I free myself up from some projects, I will definitely give more love to my YouTube channel and add thumbnails to some of the older videos and add tags as well, because that's something important if you want to try and grow your YouTube channel as well. Hey guys, so this weekend was the Manga Criolla comic convention, or really comic festival if you want to call it that as well, over in Puerto Rico. And I kind of got a little bit nostalgic because if you followed me for a long time, Manga Criolla was one of like the first videos that I made back in 2010 that really made the rounds and was relatively popular when I did those videos, when I went with Donnie Jimenez, and back then I had just torn a tendon in my ankle, so I was going around the convention on well, I'm blacking out on the words now. But yeah, I was just hobbling around the convention with a small camera that I had just bought just for the occasion of going to activities and whatnot. And I thought it would be kind of fun to go through this binder here. Like, this is kind of like all or most of my published works and whatnot. But included here is actually the Manga Criolla official magazine. And as you can see here, there's Warlord right there on the cover. And it's a jam cover with a whole lot of other Puerto Rican characters and whatnot, and comic books of the time. And it's just kind of fun to like see all the stuff. And there it is, Prospecto Art. Fred Peterson, the Mighty Warlord. Kind of a small interview type thing there. Like back then, of course, I didn't have any. The first question is basically explaining the name of the title and the studio that's come from, and if you've had any artistic preparation. So back then, I didn't study art per se, compared to like when I moved to New York now, where I have my associate's degree in fine arts, and I'm going to pursue a bachelor's degree in fine arts as well. And the second question is essentially asking for a description of the comic. So of course I explain how it's mix of superhero with fantasy and Puerto Rican slice of life between these youths that go on adventures, and also a bit of romantic comedy. Who is the hero of the comic? And of course, I answer that it's really kind of like an ensemble cast, but the main character is Fred Peterson dash Warlord. And what are the superpowers? So super agility, near invulnerability. He has super strength, a healing factor, and telekinesis that he hasn't developed just yet. And he still hasn't developed it properly in the current storylines. And talk a little bit about the villains, because the subtext of this convention was called Heroes and Villains Edition. So that was kind of the theme. So I just talk about the enemies, which of course I spoke about Fatfish, which is the crime lord of this universe. And I don't go too much into specifics with the other villains, especially since I haven't introduced that many villains just yet. The most prominent villain in book one really was Fatfish and his League of Assassins. And what does 2011 have ready for Fred Peterson, the Mighty Warlord? I had just finished book one of Warlord, so for 2011, of course, book two, my plans originally, of course, before the car accident, was to finish book two and actually start book three towards the end of 2011. And as I mentioned there, also Funnybone, Rage of the Lucky 13, I was already talking about it back then also. And asking where the comics can be bought. So of course, back then, Indie Planet, still the place to get my comics. I am going to make it available in comic shops, I guess, if there's enough demand for those older comics, but the newer ones definitely, as well as like the newer Neverminds and whatnot, will hopefully be available in comic book shops. But yeah, this was a very fun kind of walk through memory lane. So I finished another live stream. I was reminiscing again on Manga Criolla. Again, it was like a fun little trip through memory lane, and it really made me think a lot about good friend of mine that passed away earlier in the year, which was really, really sad. I was really saddened when that happened. His name was Lani Torres. I've spoken about him before on my YouTube channel and, of course, on Facebook. He was a fellow collaborator in comic books. Well, not really collaborator. We only collaborated on a comic book once by accident, and a couple of times he would do fan arts of Warlord and, color stuff as well, as a fan. As he would say, he was a fan of my comics. And we had a pretty cool friendship, he and his brother Derek. I spoke more with Lanny, really. We would just talk about comics and talk about basketball. He was a huge basketball fan, and I'm a huge basketball fan myself. So especially when the playoffs would come around, that's when we would actually talk the most to each other, because it was just interesting, because we both really appreciate the game, and even if it's not our favorite team or whatever, we still appreciate the sport. So we talked about it, as well as like the Puerto Rican Basketball League as well. One of the few people that I would talk about that stuff with. And unfortunately, towards the end of 2019, he had suffered a stroke. It was either towards the end of 2019 or right at the beginning of 2020. He fought for a few months, and unfortunately, he succumbed to the stroke in early this year, early 2021. Yeah, it was like late 2020, early 2021 that he had the stroke. And unfortunately, he succumbed to it eventually. And it was really out of nowhere. He was just a few years older than me. And it kind of hit me kind of hard. And unfortunately, that was just like the first of many people that I've lost this year, really. And then the Manga Criolla videos that I did back from 2010, I was reposting them on Facebook, and he was in one of them, of course, so it was nice to see him briefly and his brother in those videos. So I'm very glad that I was able to capture at least that one moment on video where we're just having fun and being surrounded by comics and colleagues. It really is special in hindsight. And again, it's almost a recurring theme in these episodes. Like, don't take for granted all those little moments that you have in life. You really don't know when those moments are going to be gone. Or not necessarily gone, or you don't know when you're going to have another moment like that, at least. Anyway, I'm going to cut it here for now. I'm just editing more videos of the long road to hell. I do feel like this has been a very long road right now, not gonna lie. I'm getting close to the 50 days, so I'm almost halfway there making these videos. Thank you all so much for your support, and catch you all next time. And this week, after a few shaking moments last week, of course, this week I can more positively say that this was a flawless victory. Thank you all for watching, and catch you all next week.